What is up, everyone? It is your boy KhUnlimited, and this is episode 9 of Spill the Tearal, where we go over some JRPG news, releases, mechanics, what I've been playing, what I want to play, and more. We finally got a better tagline. I worked hard on that one. And let's get straight into housekeeping. You're talking about some random shit. I've been thinking about a way to change something about this podcast. It's a very minor thing, but like, I'm a real stickler about spoilers in podcasts that I listen to. And while I'm not like actively listening to any podcast right now, but from the gaming podcast I do listen to, I feel like every single one of them absolutely suck at spoilers. There's one that's kind of newer where they've been doing better with spoilers, where they actually write in the chapters of the YouTube video like where spoilers are. That's good, but like it's not an active thing that's happening during the video. So if you kind of zone out while listening, come back in, you might get spoiled. It doesn't really help the issue with audio listeners, because sometimes the timestamps are different for audio listeners if you didn't know, because of ads and stuff. And so I was trying to think of a solution that I could do, because since I really hate spoilers, I feel like I should be trying to lead as an example of like what I want in podcasts. So I thought of a solution, and I wasn't going to like start using this anytime soon, but I found out like at the end of the podcast I do want to talk about something which has spoilers, so I might as well use it in this episode. But pretty much my idea is, what I'm going to be doing is, so I have two solutions, one for the video and one for audio. So for the video, when I'm going to be talking about certain spoilers, first I'll obviously mention what the spoiler is, but then something will come on screen visually that will be saying like something like, I don't know, like a spoiler is happening right now. And as long as that's on the screen, I am still talking about the spoiler. So you can just kind of like plus 5 seconds the video until you stop seeing that and you're good. So I think that's going to be my solution for the video version. And for the audio version, since you obviously have no visuals, I think what I'm going to be doing is, even though I don't like when this happens in podcasts, like I don't like the idea of music in podcasts, but I think that's like the only solution I can do. So what I'm going to be doing is, instead of the visual indicator in the audio version, obviously, I'm going to be adding some music underneath when I'm talking about the spoiler. And I don't know what the song is going to be. Whatever it's going to be is going to sound like this, I guess. Okay, so like whatever that sounded like, I'm not sure right now, but pretty much what that's going to do is, whenever I talk about a spoiler, you'll hear that song or a song, and if you like plus 20 seconds or whatever through the podcast, if you hear that, keep going, and once that stops, you know you're clear of the spoilers. So that's my solution now. I'm not sure if it's a perfect solution. If there is a better solution, feel free to let me know, but that's what I've thought of now, and I am going to be implementing it near the end of the podcast in one of my segments, because there are some spoilers that I'm going to be talking about in the game. It's an older game, but I still think spoilers are spoilers. I don't think spoilers age, even though a lot of people believe that. If like something came out today and a character dies in it and it's considered a spoiler, in 30 years I still think it's a spoiler, because there are people who didn't experience that thing. So yeah, that's just something I want to talk about right now, because I do like to take spoilers seriously, but I did notice in the last couple of episodes I was slightly loosey with it. Even though I did warn about it, I feel like there could be better ways to mitigate no spoilers kind of reaching people. So that is something I'm going to be trying this episode. So just want to mention that up front. I know I said this last episode I said at the start like, oh, this is going to be a shorter episode, and it happened to be my longest episode yet. I think this episode actually will be a shorter episode, because again, I didn't really play much, and there's not really any releases. There's like a decent amount of news and stuff, but like, I don't know, based on my notes, it looks like it's gonna be a shorter episode. We'll see, maybe it's gonna be long again, but it legitimately seems like it's gonna be a short episode this time. And yeah, and another thing, I did this like a couple of episodes ago, and I kind of liked it, and I feel like I'm just gonna keep doing it, where like if I get something cool and it's kind of like JRPG related, even though it's not a game, I can just show it off. So I got a thing I got a couple of weeks ago, which I didn't look at yet. Let me just like turn off my focus. It's a Blu-ray limited edition of like Suzume. It looks like really cool. For the audio listeners, I'm just showing the cover of the movie. It has that kind of like holographic film over it. It's super cool. It comes with like photo cards. I didn't open yet, but you can see like the first one over here of the main girl. It comes with a 60-page art book, which I didn't look at because I didn't watch the movie yet. But like, this is like super cool, because it was on Amazon. It isn't cheap. I think it was like, I don't know, $70. I think it was on sale, which is why I picked it up for like 50-ish or something. But I've always wanted to watch it. I didn't get to watch it, and so I'm gonna watch this whenever I get the chance. So I thought that was super cool, and I wanted to show that. And that is going to be the end of the housekeeping segment. And like I've been doing for the last couple of episodes, let's end off by showing you a random Ghibli Spirited Away card. And if you don't know why I do this, find out what episode I mentioned it, and that's why. So I randomly picked the Two of Diamonds, and in this you see the main character cleaning shit with the woman. I don't remember the names of any of the characters anymore, because it's been a while since I've seen the movie. But yes, we will start the podcast on that note. Okay, so the first segment of Spill the Tearal is what I'm playing. And like last week, unfortunately, had no time to play. like I've been mentioning in the last couple of episodes, it's Ramadan right now, so I'm fasting and stuff. And whatever my game time used to be, which is very limited, so like I used to have like 2, maybe 3 hours at the end of the day to play. I have used that time to nap now, so I'm straight up just sleeping during those times. So like I haven't had time to play. I will say I have solved the mystery of Crisis Core for me. If you didn't listen to the last episode, I mentioned that I played Crisis Core, or I was planning to play Crisis Core, and I was at the last dungeon where you have to find like these 7 materia, put them in a pedestal and pass. And I could have sworn I found the last 2, but when I actually went to play, it said I only had 1. And so I was just missing 1 material that I didn't know about. And so I spent an hour this week playing, and I pretty much just like went through the entire dungeon, every single room. And it turns out in the main dungeon area, like the straight up the place that you start, there is like a secret tunnel, which I only noticed by looking at the minimap. And if you go down that secret tunnel, you find a treasure chest, and the material was there, which is really funny because if you look at online like forums and guides, they're always going to say, even my brother, I told my brother about it, and he's like, yeah, you should probably just go to this place. And my brother and every single person said, like, you should go to this specific lake area. There's an area where it's like full of water, and you probably missed one there. And so I went there first because I'm like, maybe I did miss one, and I missed nothing because I really combed through that area the first time I went through it. But yeah, it ended up being that the last material was in the main dungeon area through the secret tunnel, which I guess was obvious to everyone else who played, but not to me. And yeah, and it's pretty easy to get turned around in Crisis Core because of the random encounters. So like if you are going a certain way and a random encounter happens, you just don't know where you were going, because like the dungeons look pretty samey in terms of like the areas, because it was just like a rocky area. And so yeah, I have found these 7 materia, and I put in the pedestal. And the only reason I didn't keep playing is because when I went to go through the door, it straight up said like, you're going to be fighting, I won't say the final boss in case you haven't played the game, but it said you're going to be fighting the final boss for the final time or something like that. And I didn't have time for that, and I wanna finish it when I have like 2, 3, 4 hours, just to make sure I have enough time to finish the game, and I just haven't had that. So I want to say I'm going to finish by the next episode. No promises. Pretty much I'm just waiting for Ramadan to end so like I can have my game time back. And Ramadan should finish before the next episode, like right before it. So like either next episode or the episode after next, I should be back to the normal flow of things. I will probably get Crisis Core done. I've been waiting for Ramadan to end before continuing my FF7 remake Let's Play, because I just don't have time to record. And so that's kind of where that's at. And yeah, so Crisis Core I played. I was also planning to play the Stellar Blade demo that released. I've been talking about how I'm kind of hyped for the game, and it looks cool. I've seen some like very short clips online, but yeah, I just haven't had time to play that either. So that is something that I plan to play too. Hopefully I'll be talking about my impressions on that for a future video or episode. But yeah, that is pretty much what I've been playing. Not much, unfortunately, but hopefully more soon. And from there, let's go to our next segment, which is a JRPG I am looking forward to. Now, a JRPG I'm looking forward to, I believe I talked about this game when it was announced. It's called Reynatis, and it looked super cool when I first talked about it. And so like I decided to spend like 30 minutes before this episode kind of looking into it, what it's about, some of the mechanics, especially because I'll be talking about this later in the episode. But one of the new segments is that they dropped a 45-minute gameplay demo for Reynatis. So like I was kind of like skimming through it, looking at little things, and I have some notes that I wrote down that I kind of want to talk about and why I'm excited for it. So first of all, there's a logline that I want to read so we all have an idea of what the game is about. So this is the description. It takes place in modern-day Shibuya, Tokyo, where magic exists. Murin Kirizumi is a magician who has obtained power free from anyone's constraints and aims for freedom. Sari Nishijima, who desires an orderly world, oversees magicians. The story begins to unfold when these two protagonists from different backgrounds meet. And so that's what it's about. If you've never seen anything about the game, like it's pretty obvious what these characters are referring to. There's like this main guy character. He is... Where's the name? He is Murin, and there's this main woman character, and she is Sari, because she's kind of like in this military outfit, so she's the one who wants world order because she's part of some organization. And the guy, he seems more of like thuggish, kind of like more, he looks like someone who would kind of want to go for freedom, and so he's the one who wants to go for freedom. And based on this, it sounds pretty cool. It's interesting that it's just like modern day Tokyo but with magic. So like I'm very interested because of that, because while I do like my fantasy worlds, I am a lot more into games that take place in modern day times, or at least like in modern cities. So the fact that this is literally just Shibuya, Tokyo, but there's magic is super cool to me, because that also means you're going to have to kind of figure out in terms of plot, like how do cell phones fit in and stuff like that, because usually a lot of plot points can be solved in games with technology, like, oh yeah, there's a security camera, like you're caught, or like, yeah, there's cell phones, you can just communicate with anyone anywhere. So like a lot of tension is gone. So I want to see how they kind of go around that in this game. But yeah, it seems pretty cool based on that logline alone. And I talked about this last time, but the style of clothing looks very Kingdom Hearts like, where like the main character straight up looks like he's wearing like clothes that Sora would wear, to the point where, funnily enough, on April 1st, they did an April Fool's joke, which I honestly didn't really get what the joke was, but pretty much they released promotional art as if there was going to be a collaboration between Reynatis and The World Ends With You. And so they had like this beautiful illustration of like the main characters of Reynatis and The World Ends With You. And seeing Reynatis being drawn in that style, I'm like, okay, yeah, this literally looks like he's a Kingdom Hearts character. Like, he looks like what Sora could be wearing in Kingdom Hearts 4, because he straight up has like the similar clothes. He has like the checkered parts where you see Sora within Kingdom Hearts 3. And so the fashion style, I think, is something that I'm really liking so far in Reynatis. The music is being done by Yoko Shimomura, so like it's gonna be absolutely godly. So like that's something I'm not worried about at all. One thing that is interesting about the game that I noticed since I watched some of the gameplay is they have like this hue over the game. Usually games that have like a sepia overtone over it, I do not like. Like I believe Octopath Traveler had like this sepia look, and I kind of hated it. Like, I wish they just like kept it like normal looking. This, I wouldn't say it's sepia. It has like a golden vibe to it, which I think that's why I'm more okay with it. I do think it's a bit much. It's like golden and very contrasty, and so like at least on YouTube there isn't like any like good high definition footage. It's kind of like shitty stream quality, so it makes it look even worse. But I'm interested in seeing how it looks like when I'm like actually looking at like the game natively, because based on like what I'm seeing, it looks a bit too much. It looks like there's like a heavy ass filter on it, but we'll see how it is when the game happens, because it does make it look like more like antiquated, almost like you're in like the 80s or something. But it does take place in modern day Shibuya though, which is what it says. So like it's not in the 80s, I'm assuming. So like, yeah, that is just something I noticed. It has like this heavy filter, which I'm not a huge fan of. But getting into a bit of the gameplay, it looks super cool. One of the things I noticed like right off the bat is you're walking around Tokyo, and it feels a lot like the Yakuza games. If you haven't played Yakuza games, you're just like literally walking around like a city, and there's a bunch of people around. You can talk to them, they kind of react to you. And I noticed in this game, like when you're playing as a dude and you're walking around, there are some people reacting to you, moving away from you. There's like exclamation marks on their head. And one thing that I noticed and I thought it was cool is you play as a main character, and like you in the art you see him, he has like this gray hair, and like he's kind of like, you know, a normal looking dude. But in the gameplay he was hooded, and he looks like he was kind of like not wanting to be noticed. So like I didn't know what that was about, and turns out like that's a mechanic in the game. So I found kind of like a description of some of the mechanics, and it seems like the reason you're kind of being stealthy is you don't want to be caught by the MEA. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to assume that's the group that the other protagonist is part of, the woman, Sari. So the reason you're going into the stealth mode is so you don't get caught by the MEA, and if you do, it literally says they'll rush you, and so I'm assuming they're going to start chasing you, and you're going to have to fight them. So that's why you kind of want to be stealthy. And I'm not sure if that happens throughout the entire game, or if that's a specific portion of the game, but that is something I noticed through the gameplay demo, and I connected to the description that I found on another website. And what's interesting is I thought that was just like a thing in the open world, but I noticed that like it's a mechanic in the gameplay too. So when he was fighting, his hood is off, and he's fighting with his like sword. It's cool as hell. His clothes are like glowing for some reason, but at some point in the fight he puts his hood back on. And like I don't know why, I don't know what the difference is, but I found a description, and it says within battles you can go through suppression and liberation modes. So I'm assuming suppression is when your hood is on, and liberation is when your hood is off. And since they literally have names for it, I'm assuming there's going to be some gameplay differences. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know what the gameplay differences are, but the fact that they do have some kind of like mode you can go in and out of, I thought was an interesting concept. So I'm interested to see what that's all about, the more information that comes out with this game. Let's see. I think one of the most important aspects of the game, which is interesting, is, I'm not sure if I already mentioned this, but you don't only get to play as a guy, you get to play as the girl too. So you get to play as Marin, which is a guy, and Sari, which is a girl. And it's not, and the thing that makes it interesting is they're on opposite sides, so like they're completely opposite factions. So like the description said, Marin, the dude, is trying to go for freedom. He's trying to use the powers for freedom, and the woman Sari is trying to use it for an orderly world. I'm assuming based on the organization she's in, because she looks like she's kind of like a cop or a military, something of that nature, because in the gameplay demo it shows her training with some other officers at the start. So it's kind of cool that you get to play as both when they're on opposite sides. So I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know who's the good guy, Because what's funny is, like, when I first started writing notes for this, I found a description, but apparently it was translated kind of wrong, because it literally said that the guy was a protagonist and the girl was trying to rule the world. And so I'm like, okay, it seems like the girl is clearly evil. I don't know why you get to play as her when they're clearly painting one as black and one as white. But I found a more accurate translation, and here it clearly calls both of them protagonists. And instead of her wanting to take over the world, it says just that she wants an orderly world, which isn't necessarily bad. That's pretty much like the mantra of being a cop, so it kind of makes sense. And so I'm very interested to see how that rolls out. I'm interested to see if, like, is this going to be one of those things where, like, you're on opposite sides, but at some point there's going to be a bigger bad and you guys have to team up to fight that bigger bad? I'm assuming it's going to go that way. JRPGs are usually more cliche that way, and I like it. I kind of want that to happen. I hope that happens, honestly. And so I'm curious to see how that rolls out. But also, like, I'm not 100% sure if that will, because at the end of the gameplay demo, they kind of had, like, this promotional art at the end, and they have, like, promotional art of, like, the woman kind of standing, and in front of her is the guy kind of chained up as if, like, she caught him. And so, like, that kind of makes it seem like that she does really want to catch this dude. And they also had, like, the exact same promotional art with different characters. So, like, there was this, like, guy cop, and he had, like, a little girl chained up. There was this other, I think, dude with guns, and he had, like, another person chained up. So, like, it looks like there is going to be group dynamics that isn't only going to be this guy, you know, on the side of freedom and this woman on the side of order. It seems like there's going to be a group of people on the side of order and a group of people on the side of freedom. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out. Whether there will be parties or not, I'm not sure, but, like, based on what I'm seeing in the gameplay, it does seem like it's fleshing out to be a party type game, even though the gameplay only showed, like, you know, solo gameplay. But yeah, that is something I also noticed based on the promotional art. And the combat itself, I can talk a little bit about that based on the demo. The combat seems to be primarily sword combat. So the woman and the guy, they're both using sword combat. They look pretty cool. As, like, action based. It looked flashy. One thing I did notice, there was this mechanic. I can't, like, completely tell what it is, but once in a while, when the streamer or whoever was playing, they would try to do this charge attack. So, like, she's playing the woman, and then this UI comes and is charging, and it takes, like, 2 seconds to charge. And if she's able to do it successfully, she does, like, this cool flashy attack. I'm not sure exactly what that is, because at some point she does that same move, but it ends up being, like, a counter. Like, she counters the bad guy's attack and, like, goes around the bad guy and stabs him. So I'm not sure if that's, like, a multifaceted attack where it can do different things based on how you use it. Because if it's a counter, you would expect that if they hit you during the load up, it's successful. But at the same time, I saw other parts of the gameplay where she was constantly trying to do the charge up, but she kept getting attacked in the middle, and, like, it kept on canceling. So I'm not sure exactly how that works, but that is a mechanic that I noticed. But yeah, she uses a sword, the guy uses a sword. I remember earlier, like, I think a month ago when the game was first announced, I talked about a previous episode. There was different gameplay then. In this gameplay demo, I only noticed the swords. I didn't watch the whole thing, but in an earlier trailer, they did show, like, other characters, and there was, like, gun combat too. So that is something you can look forward to. But again, I didn't notice any of that in this gameplay demo from what I watched, but gun combat is a thing. And another thing I noticed in the combat is, this could just be based on the way the streamer or whoever was playing, but, like, there's kind of, like, 2 forms of real-time combat that I noticed when watching a game. There's one that is very flowy, and, like, examples for that, in my opinion, are, like, Final Fantasy 16, Kingdom Hearts 2, Phantasy Star Online, where you're kind of fighting and you're kind of flowing through the battle and you keep going. And if you ever get broken out of it, like, that's a bad thing. Like, you don't want to, like, be dodging all the time. Like, you're, like, kind of always, like, on offense, and then once in a while you're in defense mode when they're kind of doing an attack, and then you're back on offense and you're flowing again. That's definitely the style I prefer. And there's another style, which I want to say the extreme end of it is kind of like a Dark Souls game, where you're very much, like, hitting once in a while, and then really quickly you're dodging again. Then you're hitting, you're dodging, you're hitting, you're blocking, you're hitting, you're dodging. And it's very, like, staccato in a way, where you're, like, always, like, changing real quick, and it's not flowy. And that's the type of gameplay I don't like. This game, she was playing as if it was more like the broken up style, where, like, she was hitting a couple of times and she was, like, jumping around, then hitting a few more times and jumping around. I don't know if the game actually is like that or whether she was just playing like that, but that is something I noticed. I'm hoping it's more of the flowy style, because JRPGs usually are that style, where, like, you can kind of, like, go hard on the enemy and attack them for a long time and get a good combo going. And based on the animations, it does look like it is the flowy style, but the way she was playing was more like attacking and jumping and dodging more often. But that is just something I noticed. And that is pretty much my thoughts on Reynatis. Just looking through my notes is pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. But yeah, I just kind of, like, took, like, 30-45 minutes to look into the game today to see if it is something I would be interested in. And it does look interesting. And it is by NIS America, and I usually like the games. Like, Trails is made by them, and I fucking love Trails. Well, they published by them, and I love Trails. And so I'll be looking forward to this game and seeing how it does when it comes out, and if there's any more like important details that comes out for this game. I'll probably be covering it on future episodes of Spill the Tearal, so look forward to that. But yeah, that was the segment of the JRPG I'm looking forward to, and from here let's go to the next segment of JRPG news. So this is a segment where I talk about some JRPG news. I don't talk about every single piece of news because that would be impossible, so I just go over things which I either think are important or I personally think are cool. I want to mention this every week. I always forget. I do get my news from Gematsu, so if you're interested in, looking for the news for yourself, go on to Gematsu's website. That's where I get all my news from. And the first thing I want to get out of the way, because I just talked about it, but Reynatis, they released 45 minutes of gameplay. Super cool. If you want to check it out, go look at it. It gives you kind of like a deep dive of like what's happening. It's in Japanese. I didn't, at least the version I was watching, there were no subs, and so like you don't get like any details really from what they're talking about, but you can at least like see what the game is. So if you're interested in that, check it out. The next piece of news, which is pretty exciting for me, is there is a collaboration between Final Fantasy XIV and Final Fantasy XVI, a crossover event called the Path Infernal. And based on what I'm seeing, it pretty much looks like you're going to be able to fight Ifrit, so pretty much Clive, and it looks super cool to me. So I'm looking at it right now, and like, yeah, you're fighting Ifrit, and like Clive's version of Ifrit is my favorite version of Ifrit. It's actually the only version of Ifrit I like. I feel like every other version of Ifrit looks kind of ugly to me, where Clive's version from Final Fantasy 16 looks fucking amazing. So it looks super cool. The only negative aspect of it is it's a limited time event, which sucks. I would expect like if they're collaborating with their own game, and I believe it's the same person who was the director of both games, I would expect it hopefully to just be a permanent thing that's always there, but it does say that it's ending on May 8th, so it's running from April 2nd to May 8th, and hopefully I can hit that. I'm not sure if I will because I'm currently not playing 14, but yep, it's happening from April 2nd to May 8th. You do have to be level 50 and done the ultimate weapon quest to do it. I believe the ultimate weapon is kind of like the final quest for the first part of the game, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, I'm kind of like going through this page, some like event items. It shows like you can wear Clive's clothes, the red and black ones. Looks super cool. The thing that I really want to scroll down and like just for this, I really want to play it is you get to get a mount that is Torgal, so it's just a huge version of Torgal and you get to ride it. I need this, bro. I fucking love Torgal in Final Fantasy 16 and it looks dope. It looks so good. And one more thing, I think they kind of botched the design of this a bit, but they also have a minion you can get, which are those little animal things that follow you, and it's also of Torgal. What's weird is like there is a baby version of Torgal in Final Fantasy 16, and it's the most adorable looking fluffy little boy. And like if that was a minion, I would have loved it so much. But they made their own like chibi weird version of baby Torgal, and like honestly, it looks kind of weird. It doesn't even look like Torgal. It just looks like a generic dog with like Torgal's color scheme on it. So like that's kind of disappointing. They literally had a official baby Torgal design. They could have made that the minion, but it's not. But yeah, those three things are pretty much the event items that are listed on the website. But yeah, that's a piece of news that I want to talk about, that the Path Infernal is a limited time event that's happening in 14 in collaboration with Final Fantasy 16. So check that out if you are interested in that. More news. Let's see. Let's talk about this a bit. I don't have too much to say on this, but there was more Vision of Mana information, so a detailed story, characters, elemental vessels, and pickles, which are these kind of like animal things in the game. So I have not played any of the Mana games, which is why I'm interested in this, but I'm kind of like on the Gematsu article on it, and they show like a lot in this article, like it's long as fuck. And I guess like one of the things I'll talk about right now is the pickles. I'm not sure if this is like a new concept in this game or if pickles were a thing in previous games, but it's pretty much like this big black like fluffy fox dog looking thing that you ride around. It's kind of your mount throughout the game, and if they gave it a species name, I'm assuming there's gonna be more of it in the game. Like maybe it's like the chocobo of this game, but that is something they mentioned. They kind of outline some of the main characters. So they show the main character named Val. They show some of the side characters, which are like these women. And the art style, I think, is like really good. It looks like Dragon Questy in a way. I'm not a huge fan of how Val looks, because he looks very baby faced. His hair is like kind of like whatever, but he's fucking ripped out of his mind. So like his like style doesn't match each other, but like, he's cool. I'll see how it is like when I hopefully potentially try this game. And the more I scroll through this article, the more details you get. And like what's cool is like apparently the game is based on like a mode based system. So like I'm going through and it shows like Val in his normal clothes, then it shows he has like a rune armor mode, then it shows he has like this golden armor mode, and they have similar things for the other party members where like there's kind of like this musketeer looking lady, and then she has like a mode where she's kind of in a black suit, and same with like the other girl who seems to be more of a mage. So they're outlining a lot of details of like different forms and modes you can have playing as the characters, which I think is dope. And one thing that surprised me when I was going through this article is they mentioned at some point, so let me get to this point. So it mentions that the Mana series was a spin-off to Final Fantasy. I had no idea that was a thing. That's super dope. That actually makes me more interested in this. And it also mentions, so let me just kind of read this part. It says the unique elements that make a true Mana game include an emotional narrative about the power of Mana, the legendary Mana sword, a quirky cast of characters, a memorable music, and a weapon-based battle system. The Mana series has released 17 titles over the last 30 plus years and sold over 9 million copies, blah, 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 blah. And Visions of Mana is the first mainline title in the Mana series in over 15 years. I had no idea that this was the first mainline title in 15 years. That's insane, bro. What year are we in? It's been that long? Like 2010-ish was like when the last game came out? Because I swear to God, there's been Mana games coming out every few years that I've noticed. I guess those were like remakes or something. So like hearing that makes me want to play this game a lot more because I've had a couple of Mana games in my PlayStation wishlist for a long time. I just never really got to it. And so like the fact that this is like the first mainline games in that long, like I kind of want to play it because especially when it was first revealed, I remember there was like a lot of talk about being like, yo, they're actually throwing a bunch of budget into this game for like the first time in a while. And so like, and it looks like really good. So like I'm pretty interested in trying this game out. It looks beautiful based on the modes. I think that's super cool. Whenever like games do that, it's pretty fun. And so yeah, I'm not going, you know, deep into the story. They talk about a lot like about elemental vessels, then story beats. It's just like a very long article. If you want to check it out, go to gematsu.com. They have like a good article about it, a lot of pictures and things too. But yeah, that's just something I want to mention in case you are interested in Visions of Mana. There's an article for it because there was a huge drop for it. And after Visions of Mana, the rest of the news stories are like less JRPGs. So let me just go through these really quick. One of the games is called Pathless Woods, and pretty much there's an early access launch trailer because it is coming out on April 3rd. And I just wanted to mention this because it does look kind of interesting to me. So Pathless Woods is a Chinese game, and it's kind of like this Animal Crossing-ish farm simulator type game. So like they have these key features. Let me just like rattle them off. You can farm and harvest, you can protect your homeland, explore the mysteries, endure the wilderness, co-op multiplayer adventure, and build your own dream home. But I think the real like key point of this game, which is pretty dope, is the developer. It's a Chinese developer, and so like the entire setting of the game seems to be in China, or ancient China specifically, as they mentioned in the description. So let me just read this really quick. Pathless Woods draws players into a world that reflects the rich cultural and architectural heritage of ancient China. Players are invited to embark on a journey where they can construct everything from simple bridges to magnificent pagodas, gather resources, engage in traditional Chinese farming, and protect their homelands from adversaries. So that's pretty cool because any game that kind of does like a setting or like a type of gameplay that's different from the norm, I think is interesting. And I think like, I don't know if I speak for everyone, but like I feel like a lot of games that like take place in America or like generically American are just like really fucking boring these days. So like the fact that like this is a farm sim game, but it focuses on the Chinese aspects of it, I think it's super cool. Like you can tell by the way people are dressed, and based on what they said, there's gonna be like Chinese farming techniques. I don't know how that's different from like what you usually see in games. So like that sounds super cool. And the visual style, I think I would best describe it as like simple, polygonal. If you've ever watched Temtem, it looks almost exactly like that in terms of like the graphic style. So like it looks really nice and colorful and poppy. And there's a combat too, so it shows them like fighting like boars and bad guys too. So it honestly looks pretty cool like as a game. So this is something that I might check out. But yeah, not strictly a JRPG. It is a Chinese game, but I thought I'd mention it because it was dope. And I was planning to talk about it last week, but the episode was running long, so I didn't. So I thought I would mention it this week because they just released a new trailer. So that is Pathless Woods. And the last news item I'm going to be talking about is a game called Megaton Musashi W Wired. The new story about it is that PS5 and PS4 pre-orders are now available, and Switch pre-orders begin on April 11th. I don't really care about the pre-order news. I just wanted to talk about the game itself since it came up and I had never heard about it. But it's pretty much like this mecha game. So kind of on the website, and it has like these Gundam looking things. Now, usually I'm not interested in mecha or Gundams, and I don't know why. Like I'm very into anime. I think Gundams look fucking cool. I literally have Gundams that I've built above me, but I don't watch any Gundam related things, and I don't play any mech related games. For some reason, I'm just not interested in them. I was looking at this and it looks kind of interesting. Like on the website, it shows like these like anime characters, and these are like the characters of the games. You have like Yamato Ichidaichi, Teru Asami. It shows like the actual mechs. And the thing that's super cool to me is that the mechs look different. Like usually when there's a mech game, they very much look like Gundams. Like even like the Trails games, which I fucking love. Like they have mechs in that, and they look kind of like Gundams, not fully. This is like they have like Gundam elements. It's very different. I would say it's more cartoony, where like they have like larger shoulders. They have like more distinct, like bigger round parts. Like their silhouette is completely different from Gundam's, and their face have eyes, which is interesting. I'm not sure if that's like actual eyes of the robot or not, but I really love it. There are other mechs in this game that like look a lot more like Gundams, and there's like this cool like samurai looking one that I saw was, I think, a pre-order bonus. But the actual like visual style, this might be something that I like more than Gundam's. The way it looks like pretty fucking cool. And the gameplay doesn't look fantastic to me, and this is something I noticed in most of my games where like, yeah, you're fighting as mechs and like the environments are kind of boring. One is like you're in a desert, one is like you're in a robot arena, and yeah, I don't know what the plot is like because I just kind of like skimmed through the trailer. But I just want to mention this game because I think the visual style and the art style and the design elements are pretty freaking dope. But in terms of the actual game, I'm not sure how good that is. But if it is something you're interested in, it is called Megaton Musashi W Wired. I noticed it used to be called Megaton Musashi Wired in like previous trailers, but now it's called Megaton Musashi W Wired. That's just in case you see both. But yeah, that was the last news story of the JRPG news section. And from here, we will move on to the JRPGs that are releasing this week. Okay, in terms of the JRPGs releasing this week, there are none. I'm going to be talking about one, which is technically a South Korean game. It is called Astra Knights of Veda, which is coming out on mobile and PC on April 2nd, so it already came out. And I will say, I'm looking at this game. It is like this 2D, almost like painterly style game. Apparently, like this was like, a lot of people were looking forward to this game when it was announced. On Steam, it has a review score of mostly negative, so it's doing horrible apparently. In the RPG site news article, it says, despite initial enthusiasm for this artistic action RPG, a problematic control scheme and several free-to-play pitfalls dampened the experience. So I'm assuming the gotcha-ness of the game was too much and people just don't like it. I'm hoping it's actually bad that it's getting such bad reviews, because I know a lot of people were just like review bomb a game for having any gotcha elements, which sucks. I believe the Disney kart rider, I forgot what the exact name, I think Speedstorm, the Disney kart racing game called Speedstorm, I believe it had negative reviews too, and that game is fucking fantastic. I believe like I actually like the driving more than Mario Kart, and I believe like gameplay wise it's actually better than Mario Kart in terms of like solo content. So like, and that was review bomb too, which sucks because it has like free to play elements which you really don't have to, use. So hopefully that is not the case here. Like hopefully it's getting bad reviews because it's actually bad and not because it just has gotcha elements. But yeah, Astra Knights of Veda. It is made by Flint, published by Hybe, which is always interesting to me because I didn't know they publish games. But yes, that is the only release that's technically not a JRPG this week for April 2nd. And that's all for this segment. Let's just straight up go to the next segment, which is a JRPG mechanic that I think is dope. Now, a JRPG mechanic that I think that is dope for this week, and I actually thought of this based on the discussion of Reynatis that we had earlier in this episode. And the mechanic I want to talk about is being able to play as multiple parties. And when I say this, I specifically mean multiple parties, not multiple characters. So like there's a lot of games where you get to play as multiple characters, but for the most part you're just switching between the characters in the same party and you're doing the same story. When I say multiple parties, I mean you switch to another character that is doing a completely different thing in the game at that point of the game, and that's what I mean by multiple parties. And I have a list of a lot of games that I played that I think do this. Some do it well, some do it not so well, and yeah, I just want to talk about some of them and give my thoughts on it. So the first one obviously is Reynatis. I can't give too much thoughts on it because I haven't played it, but what I really like about Reynatis, and I want to say this is the only game from this list that explicitly is doing this, but I really like the idea that you're playing as two protagonists that are completely on opposite sides of the spectrum of the story. It's not like they're just like two different parties, but they're straight up like opposing factions. One is fighting for freedom, one is fighting for order, and I'm assuming you get to fight each other at some points of the game. So that is super cool that they're doing that. I don't know how that's going to work in terms of like, is there going to be an actual good guy, bad guy? If they do meet, who do you control when you're fighting, etc.? But I just want to mention this really quick because I do think the idea of having multiple parties where they're actually straight up bad guy, good guy in terms of their perspectives is super cool. And I want to see how they handle that throughout the story. So yeah, Reynatis is the first one that I want to mention. A couple of other ones I want to mention, these are Kingdom Hearts games, is Dream Drop Distance and Birth by Sleep. These two are examples I want to put in the bad example bucket. I think these two did the multiple parties mechanic badly. So first of all is Dream Drop Distance. And Dream Drop Distance was a game where you play as Sora, and once in a while you can switch to Riku and play through his story. I want to say this could have been done very well. The thing that kind of fucked it up for me is the mechanic of having it be timed. So like there was like a drop meter, and every time that got to 0, you dropped and changed to another character. And I believe you could have technically dropped right back to like the original character. But I hate that like it sometimes forced you to go to the other character, and because of that, it really dampened my experience overall in the game, which may sound weird because like there'd be times where like I was in the game and I was about to do something like important, and like my drop meter was low, and I just wouldn't want to do that because I didn't want to drop during it, and so I just like dropped manually or something. Like I don't know, like it made me play the game in a way I didn't want to, and like sometimes that can be a good thing, but like in this way I'm like, this did not need to be a mechanic. They could have just straight up had like a manual drop thing where like you just drop to the other character when you want to, and maybe at a certain point in the story they force you to drop because you're getting too far. Simple as that. They didn't need a time drop meter. And Birth by Sleep is on the other side of the spectrum where like the more I think about it, it's just like so weird that they did it this way. Like I think the execution of this idea was horrible. So Birth by Sleep, if you hadn't played it, I'm sure you did. This was originally a Kingdom Hearts channel. Birth by Sleep, you have the story of 3 characters, and you get to play those 3 stories, and those 3 stories take place within the same like time frame. So the way you play it is you play the game as one character from start to end, then you restart the game as a second character from start to end, then you restart the game again as a third character from start to end. And I remember at the time I did not like this, but the more I think about it now, I truly think this was a fucking stupid decision. Like thinking about it now, if a game came out today and they made me do that, I would not play it. Like why would I start the game completely from the start just to experience the story of another character? That's so weird. Like they should have done like something like Dream Out Distance where like you get to switch between the parties as the game goes, because not only would that be better for like information retention, because every time I restart the game, it's not like I remember the previous story that much. And also on top of that, one of the biggest criticisms for me when I played Birth by Sleep originally was it felt like really short, because like technically you were playing the same short story 3 times, and that's what it felt like. But if you were able to switch between the 3 characters as you played the game, theoretically the game would have felt 3 times as long. So if every story was 10 hours long, the game would have felt like 30 hours by the end, which is like a huge difference. So they really should have done the switching mechanic like Dream Out Distance. And the reason I keep going back to the switching mechanic is based on my next game, which I think is a game that did the switching mechanic of Dream Out Distance, and they did the triple story of Birth by Sleep, but it did it correctly. And this game is Trails Reverie, which is the newest Trails game. Obviously, I love the Trails games. I talked about that a lot. But I was thinking about this because Trails Reverie is the first Trails game, I believe, where you get to play as multiple parties at the same time. And I think they did it perfectly fine. Like I don't think there's really any negative aspects to it. So pretty much the way it is you're playing as 3 different parties. So, and the way it's broken down is you're playing as a good guy party, and a bad guy party, which is, I guess it's very similar to Reynatis now that I think about it. And the way that it works is they straight up have a UI where like once you go to the UI, they have 3 timelines. And as you play as a party, it goes forward in the timeline. So you can literally see visually where you are in the timeline in each party. And at some point, if you get too far in one party, it will lock you out and force you to play as one of the other 2. And then once you catch up with those 3, there'll be some point where they all meet or something like that will happen where they'll interact. And then once again, you get to play as the 3 as you want. I think that was just done perfectly. It's like you get to switch when you want. The only time they force you to switch is like when you're too far in the story, which is completely understandable. And it's doing the 3 story approach of Birth by Sleep, but it's not stupid where like this game, like the I haven't finished it, but like what I've played of the game, I'm like 90% done. Like I cannot imagine this game if they force you to play start to end of one party, then start to end of the second party and the third party, because there's so much little hints they give throughout the game of what's happening, and then there's like character interactions between them. And I believe in Birth by Sleep there were character interactions there, because there were points where like I believe like I don't know, say Ven and Aqua met, or Terra and Ven met, or something like that. I believe there were points like that, but like they didn't feel as cool because you have to restart the entire fucking game to get that, whereas in this there would be a moment of interaction, and then you'd be able to switch the party immediately if you want and see the interaction from their point of view. And it was really cool because like, without going into spoilers, but there was like a moment where there were the 2 parties met and they don't really know each other, and one of the parties kind of crashed into the second party and they're like, oh sorry, and you moved on. And that's what happened from the point of view of the second party. They just think that the first party just crashed into them and they moved on. But when you actually get to play as a party that crashed into the second party, you find out you did that intentionally to steal their wallet or something. It was something of that nature. And so like that was really super fucking cool. And that wouldn't have been nearly as cool if you had to replay the entire fucking game to get to the point again, because you probably would have forgot that moment from the original game. So like, yeah, the fact that they let you play through all 3 timelines in tandem, the fact that they let you switch whenever you want, I think that's the way to go. And that's it's funny, I'm thinking about this live. I didn't write this part down, but I think Reverie did like a mix of Dreamed Out Distance and Birth by Sleep, but did them correctly, which is kind of cool. And the final couple of games I want to talk about in terms of playing multiple parties, I think they do it the best, which is Ys 8 and Ys 9. I will be saying now, I will be going into Ys 8 and Ys 9 spoilers. So I'm probably going to be intermingling both spoilers. So this is just a spoiler warning for both. So I'm going to be trying my new spoiler technique. There's a visual on the screen now, and hopefully some spoiler music is playing in the background. So if you want to skip, I think this will probably be the end of the segment. So honestly, you could just skip to the next segment of the podcast. Or if you do just want to, I guess, manually go, just keep skipping forward until you stop hearing the music or the visual symbol goes away. But yes, let's get straight into it. Now, the way multiple parties are done in Ys 8 and Ys 9 are fucking fantastic, because like when you first start doing them, you don't know what's going on, which is why it's cool. So let's start with Ys 8, which is a bit more clear than Ys 9. So Ys 8, the way it happens is you're playing as Adol, which is the main character, and he's always the main character. And whenever he went to sleep, you start playing as this girl. And like you just play as her, and it was always weird because you're playing as Adol, you're on this island, and then when you go to sleep, you start playing as this girl, and you don't know what's going on, you don't know who you are, you don't know where you are, you're in some like village, and like you just play as her. When she goes to sleep, you play as Adol again, and you just keep repeating that. And what's cool is you start finding out throughout the story is that whenever like you play as a girl, Adol dreamt about that, and whenever you play as Adol, the girl dreamt about that. So they know what they're doing. So like that's a cool part. So like they can see what each other is doing. And the reason I think this was done masterfully is because they weren't doing this party member system for no fucking reason. There was actually a narrative reason for it, and a very twist reason for it, which is at some point as you're playing as Adol and you're on the island, you kind of, I believe you like climb a mountain, you look down and you see the ruins of a village. And once you go into the ruins of the village, you realize the ruins of the village you're in is the village that the girl is in when you're playing as her. And so it's just like, what the fuck? Why are there ruins of a village? And so when the day ends, you go to sleep and you wake up as a girl. The girl's just like, what the fuck? That's my village. The village that I just dreamt about was my village, but it was in ruins. And slowly you get to find out when you're playing as a girl, you're playing in the past. And when you're playing as Adol, you're playing in the present. And that's kind of like the huge twist. And you pretty much have to work together using this dream mechanic to like save her pretty much. And so later on you actually get a mechanic where you get to kind of switch on demand based on these pedestals, and so you'd be able to do puzzles where like you need to cross this ravine as Adol, and then you switch to the girl, she plants a seed, you go back to Adol, and a tree is there that's made a bridge, so things like that. And it's just really fucking cool because you straight up get to do something where you get to bring the girl into the present. And I won't go into details of that because they're not really necessary, but like it's just like, yeah, this is like the perfect example where you get to play as multiple parties. There's a narrative reason for it. They reveal a twist through it, and like you kind of had to do that. Like this gameplay mechanic had to be done in multiple parties for it to work, and it was done amazingly. I loved it, and like I think that was like the main reason I really love Ys 8, because Ys 8 I know it's like very popular. I didn't think it was like the best Ys game at all, but like I think that was the main reason where like when that happened I was like, oh shit, I see why Ys 8 is special. And similarly, Ys 9 did something where when they did it, I thought they were doing the exact same thing as Ys 8, and the thing is, Ys 9 is confusing till the end. So with Ys 8, you kind of quickly find out that it was like the dream thing where like you're dreaming as like each other, and then you find out like kind of later, but not too much later, that like the twist of the past and present. With Ys 9, I'm just gonna like explain it to you, and then like you can like kind of think about what it means. So with Ys 9, you're playing as Adol. You're in a city. When you get into the city, they arrest you right away because you're kind of known as like an adventurer and you've done some illegal things. They arrest you, they find out you're good, they release you, and then you're kind of staying at this tavern. You're staying at the tavern, you go to sleep, you wake up again, and you're in prison again. And so like when that happened, I was like, I guess this is a flashback. I don't know what the fuck's going on. And so like you're just in the prison, you're trying to break out, you can't, you sleep again, and you wake up as Adol in the tavern. And I'm like, okay, that was a weird flashback. It didn't really tell me anything. But at the same time, having played East 8, I'm like, am I dreaming of like something? Am I dreaming of the future, present, or the past? I don't know what the fuck is going on because I'm playing as the same character. But I keep playing the game. I play as Adol, that's like in the tavern. And throughout the game, as the Adol that's outside, you do get to break into the prison once in a while to like do certain missions. But what's kind of mind-blowing is, so like there's a certain mission as Adol from the outside, you break into the prison, you do something, you break back out, and like you're good. You go to sleep, you play as the inside Adol again. And as you're playing as the inside Adol, you could hear guards talking, and the guards would be like, yo, like, did you hear that like Adol broke into a prison and then he escaped? And then like once that happened, I was like, wait, what? So is this a present? I thought I was playing the past the entire time because at the start of the game, Adol was taken to prison, so I thought I was playing that segment of the game. But they just mentioned a current event that I just played as Adol, but I'm also Adol in the prison. So like when that happened, I was like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. And like the Adol in the prison is kind of confused too. He's like, I'm here, what do you mean I just broke in? And slowly, as you get to play as the inside Adol, because it keeps cutting between them, you get to escape the prison more and more each time. So like at one point you get to escape your cell, then you have to go back in at the end of the night, then you get to escape and go to like slightly further, and then you go back in. And at some point you have to go further, you get to read some like criminal records, and you see like, yeah, it says like Adol has escaped. So like you don't know what's happening. And pretty much the huge twist at the end of the game is that you are playing as another Adol. And the mind-blowing aspect is the Adol that was in prison the entire time is the real Adol. So the Adol that you've been playing as through the other games, that's the one in prison. And the one that you've been playing as on the outside is a fake. And pretty much the story is pretty much about homunculi and homunculuses. And basically what they did is, when you were taken to the prison, and they don't show you this obviously at the start, they created a homunculi version of you. That's the one that ended up escaping. And the one that was in the prison is a real one. And it's super cool. It's like very twisty, and you start like realizing other things where like the party members throughout the entire game, they're also homunculi of like historical figures and things like that. And thankfully at the end of the game, both of them fuse, so like you kind of get like one Adol that has the memories of both, or like there's no like weird like timeline stuff they have to worry about in the future games. But like again, you're playing as multiple parties. You're playing as the same character in multiple parties, and I fucking love they don't like, you know, like baby feed you like the information and say like, oh yeah, you're playing as like another Adol, but like, you know, you're kind of a fake. Like, no, you have to kind of figure it out as you play the game. They let you be confused for hours and hours and hours of the game, and like force you to figure out yourself until like the twist happens at the end. So like, I love that. Perfect example of multiple parties, and like I think it's just like done fantastically for a narrative and a twist reason. So yeah, East 8 and East 9 I think do it the best. But yeah, that's pretty much my conversation of why I think multiple parties in JRPGs are an amazing thing, and they can be done well, like in East 9, East 8, and Reverie. Birthday Sleep and Dream Drop didn't do it as well, and Reynatis looks like it has potential to do it well too. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about multiple parties in JRPGs. And let's go into our final segment, which is the casual JRPG top list. Now for the JRPG top list this week, and again I say this every episode, this is a casual list, as in I just thought about it very quick and I will give you my list straight off. This one's gonna be super short because it is related to the segment I just did. The top list I'm doing is the top JRPGs that use multiple parties, and so it's pretty much what I just talked about, where the games like East 9, East 8, Reverie, Dream of Distance, Birth by Sleep, etc. And I'm pretty much gonna be ranking them based on I think which game did it the best and which game did it not as good, I guess. And so let me just give you my list straight up. Number 3 is Reverie, number 2 is East 8, and number 1 is East 9. And I'm not gonna go deep into this at all. I literally just talked about this like 30 seconds ago. I think Reverie did it very well. I think the only aspect of Reverie, which I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, but I think Reverie could have also taken the path where like they didn't have to have like the switching mechanic when you switch between parties. Like I feel like the game would have been perfectly fine if they kind of forced me to switch whenever they wanted to. So like if I got to a certain point with party 1, they just switch me to party 2, and then once I get to a certain point, they switch me to party 3, and then I go back to party 2. And like if they force me to switch to certain like at certain times, I think that would be good too. I don't think it was done bad in any way. It's just like, yeah, it was a good feature that they had where you could switch parties, but like it also didn't need to be there in the way they did it specifically. Number 2 is East 8. I talked about it. It was done fantastically. I won't talk about the twist in this section because I talked about in the last section, but like the way you play as a multiple parties through the dream state, I thought it was very cool. And number 1 is East 9, similar thing when you're sleeping, and the playing of multiple parties I thought was super cool. I won't go into details because it's very spoilery, and I talked about the spoilers in the last segment. But yeah, that ends this episode of Spill the Tearal episode 9. Next episode will be episode 10. I want to say that will be the point where I'll have the same number of episodes as Shotlocked. I believe Shotlocked, my Kingdom Hearts podcast, which I'm not doing right now, is 10 episodes. So not only will we be hitting double digits, we will be matching Shotlocked, and from then on, we'll be surpassing Shotlocked, which is super cool because that is something I want to do. And it is something that I found out is pretty important in the podcast game, which is you have to be consistent, even though that is harder than you think. I guess I'll end off the podcast by saying this. There's a podcaster that I listen to, and he has a podcast about this specific gaming niche. And a lot of people, when he started it, asked him, like, why are you doing this podcast? There's like 50 other podcasts that do this niche. Like, how can you be so sure that you're going to be able to beat them? And that podcast host pretty much said, like, I don't have to try because I will be able to beat 95% of those podcasts just by doing my podcast, because I bet you 95% of those podcasts will quit at some point. And what he said is true. You see that with podcasts a lot. Like, you see that with Shotlocked. Like, I did it. I stopped at a certain point. I came back. It's very inconsistent. There's no real reason to watch it if it's inconsistent, because the point of podcast is that you kind of put it on every week or every bi-weekly or whatever it is. And so just by doing a podcast consistently for a long amount of time, you will gain an audience and you will beat out most of the podcasts in the same niche. So that I kind of want to do that with Spill the Tearal. I kind of want it to be a JRPG podcast, which can beat out others at some point just by me doing it. And then at some point, once it is like long running and consistent, that's when you could kind of focus on like, okay, what makes me different from the other top 5 or top 10 or top whatever JRPG podcast. But yeah, that's just something I want to mention, and hopefully Spill the Tearal gets there one day, and it is something that I'm able to do every single week for a long time to come. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed episode 9 of Spill the Tearal. Hope to see you in episode 10. Remember to like this episode if you enjoyed it. Remember to comment with any thoughts you had. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time.